What's up and welcome to another episode of Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we're taking a look at how Fortnite runs on a $3,000 gaming laptop with a GTX 1080, an iPad Pro 2018 edition, 12.9 inch. This is the new fastest with the A12X Bionic chip. It is literally the fastest tablet currently available. And then we have the Surface Pro 6 that has the i7-8650U with the Intel 620 HD graphics. We're going to be thoroughly testing out Fortnite to see how it performs across all three systems. It should be super interesting. Will Fortnite even be playable on the Surface Pro 6 at all? It's obviously going to be really good performance on the Aorus X7, but sometimes you don't want to lug a 7-pound gaming laptop or even a 5-pound gaming laptop. Sometimes you want to take something that's under 2 pounds, like a setup like an iPad Pro or a Surface Pro 6. Here we go. It's going to be freaking epic. Let's get started. All right, we're going to see how fast Fortnite launches on all three devices in 3, 2, 1. And then we'll also be comparing the performance of once they're in and seeing how many frames per second, how consistent it is, and what the graphics look like. Okay, they're all in now. The Aorus X7 wins first. iPad Pro 2018 gets second. Let's go ahead and get them all into the same party. Here we have a 1080p display running at currently 300 frames per second. For the iPad, you can see that we have it on high with 30 FPS cap, and it just pretty much stays at 30 FPS at all times. And it's only probably a little bit above 720p resolution for the actual gameplay items. On the Surface Pro 6, we have it set at 720p resolution for rendering. So you can see that we have everything on off and low, and we have the 3D resolution of 1080 by 720p. The overall graphics is definitely much better on the Aorus X7 as you would expect, though I would say the graphics on the iPad is the next smoothest, and then we have the Surface Pro 6 over here going at the worst. At the same time, what can you really expect with a Surface device? It's not really meant for gaming. We're averaging over 150 FPS on the Aorus. We're hitting that 30 FPS cap really smooth on the iPad, but I wish you could do it 60 on the iPad. We're actually doing all right on the Surface Pro. We're hitting about 35, 40 FPS right now on the Surface Pro 6. We have all three devices now pointing at the same spot. The Aorus X7 is getting 260 FPS. The iPad's hitting that 30 FPS consistency. And the Surface Pro 6 is actually averaging right around 45 FPS. Most importantly, we're looking at the performance of the Surface Pro 6 because that's the big question mark. The Surface Pro 6 is hitting still consistently above 40 right now at the 720p resolution. I'm actually really impressed with how it's running. I think the iPad would be even more impressive if we were allowed to set the graphics settings and the frame rates all specifically rather than just big mass settings. Obviously, the PC is the best way to play, without a doubt. But when you're trying to play Fortnite on the go, there's limited options in terms of space in your hand or lap. The laptop clearly takes up the most space, but it also runs probably the best. I gotta say, the Surface Pro 6 is playing a lot better than I thought. It's staying above 30 FPS consistently, oftentimes being about 45, 50 FPS. I'd say it's averaging close to 40 though. Overall. That is still really impressive for a low voltage processor and integrated graphics card, I think. So there you have it with the Aorus X7. We're averaging over 200 FPS, which is plenty for the 144 Hz monitor. The only area of the map where you're really going to struggle is tilted. Sometimes you're going to get less than 200 FPS there. The iPad Pro, the main downside is that we're capped to 30 FPS right now, but it does perform really smooth and maintains a consistent 30 FPS in pretty much all the areas except for maybe tilted as well, with dips maybe to about 20, 25 FPS if I were to be guessing. When it gets the upgraded 60 frames per second gameplay and controller support, then it would definitely be better on the iPad Pro, especially if you're comfortable on a controller. Now the Surface Pro 6 actually surprised me initially when I first fired it up. It had much worse performance, but this time today, it was averaging probably 40 FPS, sometimes as high as 60. The main issue with the Surface Pro 6 is that there are dips down into the 20s and below whenever new content is being rendered, such as someone shooting rockets at you or explosions going off. And then it seems like after the first time it renders those things, it's good to go. It'll play it smoothly going forward, but just there's a lot of little hitches here and there but overall it's definitely playable for the most part. And in terms of whether I would rather play Fortnite on an iPad or on the Surface Pro 6, hands down I'd rather play on the Surface Pro 6 because I can use a keyboard and mouse. On top of that, we're averaging more FPS on the Surface Pro 6, even though there are some dips and stutters. The main downside to playing Fortnite on a Surface Pro 6 is that when you are on the go and you're only getting 40 FPS, you're going to be playing against PC players that have ridiculously good systems and are getting more than 150 FPS like they would on this guy. There is one other option in terms of improving the performance on the Surface Pro 6, and that is using GeForce Now, which would stream the gameplay from another gaming server. Essentially, it runs the game on that gaming server and then streams the gameplay directly to your Surface Pro 6. And that would work fine in a home environment, like a Wi-Fi environment where you have a really good low latency connection. And in that circumstance, you're gonna get consistent 60 FPS. That'll be hands down, no argument, way better than the iPad Pro. Getting something like this is obviously the only way to go if you want to be a competitive gamer and play at the maximum FPS and all of that. So that's it for this comparison of these three devices playing Fortnite. I'll have a full comparison review breakdown between these three devices coming very soon. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that, and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. We'll see you guys in the next one. Brandon out.